Good morning, South Rock. Welcome to the Story Weekly Devotion. This is week 9, chapter 9, where we get to talk about Ruth. Ruth is a short book in the Old Testament, but it has so many implications for the future. I could sit here and talk about what a kinsman redeemer is, which is actually a type pointing to Jesus, as Jesus is our kinsman redeemer. He is Israel's kinsman redeemer, in that he is from humanity, he's from Israel, and he redeemed all of us. So I could talk about that for hours. I could talk about how Ruth is effectively, I believe, David's great-grandmother. That's right. King David, who will be in 1st and 2nd Samuel, she's begets Obed, who has Jesse, who has David. So could talk about that, the family tree of that. But what I want to talk about is Ruth and Boaz, two characters from this week, and their incredible generosity. So first of all, Naomi, who's Ruth's mother-in-law, she's widowed, and then Ruth in turn is widowed. And instead of going back to her father's home, instead of going back to where she knows she'll be taken care of and she can, figure it out from there, she decides that she's going to go with Naomi and basically take care of this woman. Because in this time, in this day and age, if you were a widow or if you basically just weren't a virgin, you were not going to be looking forward to another wedding. You were not going to be looking forward to owning land or being taken care of, especially if you didn't have children. So the fact that Naomi doesn't have any children or a husband, Ruth doesn't have any children or a husband, means that they are in dire straits. And so Ruth says, I am going to take care of this woman who was my husband's wife, or my husband's mother. And so that's generosity number one. Then when they go back to Israel, where Naomi's from, she continually takes care of this woman. She goes out and she basically goes in farms, gleans is the word I was looking for. She gleans the fields. So what that means is as the fields were harvested, Ruth would come behind them and pick up what was ever dropped or what was left behind. Now, this was a law instituted in the Pentateuch, in the Torah, and Genesis through Deuteronomy. There's not a ton of evidence that it actually happened a lot, though. So there was no real evidence that farmers or people that had land and planted fields did this consistently, even though it was instituted in the law. We have a couple examples of that. There was something called the Year of Jubilee, where every 50 years debts would be forgiven in Israel. We have no record of that ever happening. And so there is a problem, a generosity problem in Israel. And yet when Ruth goes to Boaz's field, she is welcomed to glean. She's not chased off or mistreated. She's welcomed. And so Ruth has this generosity of work for Naomi and taking care of Naomi, while Boaz has this generosity that comes from following the law correctly. And then not only that, but Ruth's generosity towards Naomi is seen by Boaz. And so Boaz gives her extra to help take care of Naomi. And so each phase of their generosity begets further generosity from each of them, to the point where they become wed, and they end up being in the line of David, who is in the line of Jesus. And so their generosity beget generosity, which inevitably led them to being part of the salvation story. And so my question for you is, what's stopping you from being part of this generosity line? We have an opportunity this week to be courageously and ridiculously generous. What's stopping you? And that can be with your time, that can be with your money, that can be with your space, or whatever the case is. We have an opportunity this week to be extraordinarily generous. How can you do it, and what's stopping you? Until next week, I'll see ya.